would like to call this meeting to order. And at this time, I would like to ask the Reverend Adam Gordon from the Pleasant Hill United Methodist Church to come and give our invocation.
Let us pray. O God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, we give you thanks that you are our shelter and you are our home. We give you thanks that you are the one in whom we live and move and have our being, that you are the source of our life and our power. We continue to invite you into this place now for this time of conversation and decision-making. Bless our efforts and our work and our conversations, that all that we do might be pleasing and acceptable in your sight. Give us wisdom so that the decisions we make might not just glorify and honor you, but also help us to live into our call to be neighbors to all. All of this we pray to you in your holy and powerful name. Amen. Amen.
At this time, I would like to call our attorney, Jimmy Woods, up to present the register.
As you came in, you registered, so if you did not, we would like to get you to register. This annual meeting is pursuant to the bylaws of the association. On October the 5th, 2017, notice of the annual meeting was mailed to 26,349 members. And that notice is as follows. Notice of annual members meeting. To the members of Northcentral Mississippi Electric Power Association, notice is hereby given that the annual meeting of the members of Northcentral Mississippi Electric Power Association will be held in the Northcentral Electric Auditorium in the Administration Building of the Association, located at 4600 North Central Way, Olive Branch, Mississippi, 2:00 p.m., October the 25th, 2017, for the election of directors to serve for the ensuing 3 years and for the transaction of such business of the association as shall come before the meeting. 3 directors are to be elected for 3-year terms. The membership, pursuant to the bylaws, has nominated for re-election to the office of director the following members. District 1 nominee Pat Woods, address P.O. Box 353, Bahia, Mississippi. District 4 Tony Taylor, 7283 Hunters Horn Drive, Olive Branch, Mississippi. District 8 Ricky Jones, 300 Tullahoma Road, Holly Springs, Mississippi. Votes may be cast in person at the meeting, or you may vote by executing and returning the enclosed proxy. All proxies must be received in the Olive Branch office no later than 2:00 p.m. on October the 23rd, 2017 to be valid. Sincerely, Don Dixon, Secretary of the Association. At this time, we'll ask for approval of the minutes of the 2016 annual meeting.
Make a motion we approve those minutes and waive the reading.
Have a second? Motion is second to approve the minutes for the 2016 annual meeting and waive the reading of same. All in favor, aye? Aye. All opposed? The motion's carried. Pursuant to the bylaws, we require a quorum for this meeting. We have an election committee. Chairperson is Rita Hobbs, Ms. Anna Gatewood, Sam Rockard, Ms. Carol Wiseman, Ms. Carrie Bradley are members. And I would ask the chairperson, Ms. Hobbs, has your committee met and determined if we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Establish that we do have a quorum. The candidates which were through petition were submitted for each district And as I said earlier, District 1, Pat Woods, which is basically the Bahia area. District 4, Mr. Tony Taylor, which is sort of east on Goodman, and Mr. Ricky Jones, and at his address at 300 Chulahoma Road. At this time, our bylaws provide for an agenda for this meeting, and our next item on that agenda would be the report of Mr. Kevin Dodderidge, the CEO and manager of North Central Mississippi Electric Association. Mr. Dodderidge.
Thank you, Jimmy, and good afternoon, everyone. Can y'all hear me? All right. If not, just wave and I'll speak up. I want to welcome everyone to North Central's 67th annual meeting. We've been doing this for 67 years. I haven't been doing this for 67 years, but I was thinking earlier I have been doing this for 30 years. 30 years ago, I attended my first annual meeting as an employee. I'd like to introduce all our directors, and if y'all want to, you can just hold your hand up. We got with us our board president, Pat Woods, who you saw earlier. Jerry Nichols is our vice president. Don Dickerson, our secretary-treasurer. And the reason I'm doing this is if y'all got tough questions, I want you to know who runs this place. Joan Childress, Ricky Jones, Phil O'Shea, Julie Niblett, Tony Taylor, Morris Thompson, and of course you've seen our attorney, Jimmy Woods. Glad they could be here. I always like to go back in time a little bit and kind of compare and contrast some, and I like to go back about 50 years. If you go back 50 years, North Central had approximately $2.1 million in total plant assets. Had about the same service area from roughly around Malone Road in DeSoto County all the way back into Marshall County and Boot Hill and down into close to Sardis Lake. Had about the same square miles we covered, but only about $2 million in physical plant. Just to give you an idea, to build a substation, y'all have seen the substations that we build. To build a substation, it takes roughly twice that amount. So kind of shows you how things have changed. North Central back then owed about $2 million to REA, so they owed basically what they had in plant. North Central, 50 years ago, this has been around 1967, in that fiscal year, had $24,000 in income. Had started returning an income for the first time in 17 years. Now, North Central was still about $850,000 in the hole, so it'd be some years till we really got into the black there. Annual revenues were at $470,000. So in 1967, North Central brought in $470,000. Now North Central brings in $500,000 in about 36 hours. We had 3,900 accounts, and the discussions that were taking place involved capital credits, maintenance of our rights-of-way, and rates from our wholesale power provider, TVA. Now, to mention some important things that took place in 1967, to get away from the business aspects, the Cardinals had just won their second World Series in a row, beating the Boston Red Sox in 7 games. Their manager, Red Schonquist, led them along with MVP Bob Gibson. Back then, if you listened to it on the radio, it would have been done by Pee Wee Reese and Harry Carey, then the voice of the Cardinals. The top single back then was Ode to Billy Joe by Bobby Gentry. So some of y'all might remember this stuff. I was just 2. But to bring us forward to 2017, and I didn't make that up, I really was 2 back then. If I bring us forward to 2017, we're going to look at our financials. And some of y'all may have them in your hands. If not, I'm going to walk you through them a little bit because I think we've got an error on the balance sheet that was given to you. But I'm going to walk you through 2017 financials. Plant valued at about $158 million in 2017. We increased that by about $6 million. Our cash and short-term investments at the end of our fiscal year, and to remind you, the fiscal year 2017 ended as of June 30th. So our cash and short-term investments as of June 30th were at $13.5 million. Now that doesn't mean we had that much cash in the bank. That's a certain amount of cash that we had. We had some short-term investments. When I say short-term, they would come due in less than 12 months. Also, this is what was in the bank that day. And I always like to point out, the next day we pay our power bill to TVA, which usually brings that money down quite a bit. So we had $13.5 million, that's June 30th, but our working capital was probably somewhere around $6.8 million. The equity at Northcentral approached $87 million. Equity as a percentage of total assets is right at 67%. And as far as electric cooperatives go, that's a pretty high number. So if you ever hear us say that you are a member of our cooperative, then the members of Northcentral, their equity position in the cooperative is 67%, or around $87 million. Now, according to contractual obligations that we have with our regulator, TVA, we are unable to retire any of that money at the moment. That may be part of a future discussion, but right now, we are unable to retire it. We're just expected to keep our rates low, which we try to do. We do allocate it, though, so we know what those amounts are. When I say that we try to keep our rates low, according to cost of service studies and inflationary indexes, TVA pre-approves rate increases for us every year. And for the most of the time, we refuse to take those rate increases. And we've actually left on the shelf over the last 5 years about $15 million in rate increases that Northcentral could have taken. The long-term debt at Northcentral is $21.5 million. That's up 1.5. Kind of a net effect there. We borrowed $3 million this last year, paid it down about 1.5, so 1.5 is a net effect. Sales revenue was over $100 million this year, in the first for the history of the association. That was about an 8.5% or increase. It was 7.5% over budget. It had been flat for several years, so we were really happy to see the increase. The increase came because of some increased industrial sales. Also, we got some new households, but we got some heat there toward the end of our fiscal year in June that really helped us. Power cost was at $81.2 million. That's what we send to TVA. So you can do the math there real quick. $100 million in sales, $81.2 million in power costs. You can tell that we send well over, or a little bit over, 81% of every dollar we collect goes back to TVA. The revenue less power cost. Now that's a figure I always emphasize because that's what we live on here at Northcentral. That's what's happened after we paid the power bill. Revenue less power cost was at $19.8 million, which was up $2.5 million from the previous year. Mind, like I said, that had been a flat figure for many years. So it's good to have some growth. Our operations expense were close to $8 million. They were up 4%. A lot of this was inflationary, and we did a little bit of hiring that year, but it was at budget. Our maintenance costs came in around $3 million, and that's up a good bit because of some right-of-way issues that we had and some storm costs. Anybody remember the storms of Memorial Day weekend? We certainly do. And that added quite a bit. In a year that we really hadn't had really any prolonged outages or any severe weather, that weekend itself proved to be pretty difficult on us. So, and that storm was also somewhat unique in that it wasn't as much lightning damage as it was trees. So that can be a little bit more expensive. Lightning damage, you tend to have to go out there, find out where the lightning hit, fuse something back up, close the circuit back in. But tree removal takes a lot longer time, and it costs a lot more to do, especially over a holiday weekend when you're looking at overtime and after-hours work as well. Now, we did what it took to get the lights back on, but we still had increased maintenance costs throughout the rest of the fiscal year, and actually up till now. We'll get the tree off the line, get the limb off the line, but at some point we've got to go out there and get everything cleaned up like we want it. And total kilowatt-hour sales were up somewhere around 5%. Total income was $2.9 million, which was a lot more than last year, which, like I said, it's good to finally see some growth. But as I often tell people, $2.9 million income is not a cash figure. And I'm not going to sit here and bore you with accrual-based accounting, but we have to take into consideration depreciation and other things. But $2.9 million is the value of the income that we received. Now, if you want to know how this fits in with other electric cooperatives, I like to do some comparisons. If you look at other electric cooperatives throughout the United States, when it comes to kilowatt hours sold, we're in the top 15%. If you look at the number of employees that a cooperative has to serve these kilowatt hour sales, to serve the miles of line, we're in the bottom 20%. That's not bad. Means we're doing more with a little bit less. Liquidity, top 15%. Liquidity meaning we can pay our bills. Long-term debt, we're in the bottom 10%. So we're fueling all this growth with less debt. Now, if you're running your house, that may be a good way to do things. I could probably make a case that we need to increase our debt a little bit. We need to be equitable to our current member. If you're paying a power bill now to North Central as a member, you don't want to have to pay for everything that we do in a year in that year. As I say, we need to let future members participate in that as well. Rates, we're in the bottom 25% as far as staying low, which is difficult to do when you're financing so much of the capital work that we do through rates. Sales per mile of line. So how much did we sell per mile of line? We're in the top 10%. And operations and maintenance, we're in the bottom 5%. Now, the bottom 5%, that's good for as far as your income statement looks, but we have to make sure we keep up with that number because you don't want to brag on being low on your maintenance. Maintenance is something that ensures reliability for you members right now, so we don't want to go cheap on that. Now, 2017 saw some improvements in several areas. We continued our system upgrades. We're building a substation now on East Cox Road, if any of y'all have seen that. The substation before that, the North Marshall station, was up on Wingo Road, Quality Drive. That's the station that we started to build, and then we actually had to add on to it before we were through with it. And as you would imagine, the reason this is being done is all the commercial and industrial growth that we're seeing in the Chickasaw Trails area. I mean, right now, Marshall County is the hotbed for us. We're starting a control room. We're building out a control room here at North Central to where we can run more remote SCADA-type activities here. The problems that we see on our system, you ever seen the man go out there and he's got the hot stick and he fuses something back up? We want to have someone that is monitoring our system constantly via a video display, can see when something goes wrong, and can do some of those actions remotely. We've finally completed and are using a safety demonstration trailer right now. That's something that didn't come cheap, but there's a lot of value to it. And we are using that thing constantly. JD is usually your safety and loss control guy. You see him around here a lot, but we don't see JD that much because as soon as he unveiled the safety demonstration trailer, it got put on order, and people want to see it all over the place. And we're also continuing our fiber design. You've talked about fiber to the home last year and things such as that. Well, we still haven't taken our eye off that. We're just making sure that we get that basic infrastructure built in. It's being designed right now, and we hope to continue with the construction in 2018. Now, as we look ahead to 2018, we're going to anticipate a slight increase in sales. We're not really sure how much, and judging from July, August, and September, it's not going to be that good. September was really mild, but if you recall, October up till this week was fairly warm, so we're hoping to at least maintain the status quo as far as sales go going into the first quarter of 2018. The budget will probably exceed $110 million. That is, if we take all our CapEx projects and finance them through rates. We may go out and do some stuff with some debt. We may wind up actually deferring a couple of projects that aren't specific to the reliability of our system. You're going to see maintenance increase at North Central. We learned a lot from these storms that we had over Memorial Day, and then recently when the remnants of Hurricane Harvey came through the area. When we have a big storm, pick on my friends up north. When I say north, I mean Memphis. When you have a storm, how many of y'all hear about how bad it is in Memphis and how slow restoration is? We hear that a lot. Well, there's a reason behind it. It's an urban area. It's been there for a while. The vegetation has grown up, and it just makes things more difficult when a storm comes through. Well, we were teetering on that line going into this summer. Probably Goodman Road, north in DeSoto County, heavily urban area, a lot of growth. It's been there for a long time. And we saw a lot of problems with the trees that came about during the Memorial Day storms, as were the Labor Day storms. We tend to have storms over holidays this past year, so I don't know what the future has for us, but we're not letting anybody off over Thanksgiving. But we learned that we had a lot of trees and a lot of issues there, so starting at the beginning of June and really going up to about now, we have really ramped up our maintenance and our right-of-way program. We have cut a lot of trees because we see where we were headed, and we're going to try to make sure that we don't get there. Operations, I mentioned the safety report. We're going to enhance it more and more. Now, we got a capital budget this year, and that means things we're going to build. We got a capital budget this year somewhere around $13 million. And we play with that a little bit. We kind of will prioritize projects. If we see ourselves maybe getting a little short on money we want to spend in that area, we may defer something a couple of months. Not to sacrifice reliability, but sometimes when you prioritize things, you can move things around. But like I said, we are going to finish out our control room. We are going to continue to work on our fiber network. East Cox substation, we're going to try to wrap it up in the next several months or sometime into the spring. We want to build a training facility. We want to find a place where not only can we train our employees, but we can also use it as a place to train others. And it's going to be more than just a couple of poles sitting around. It's going to be poles, but it's also going to be where we mock some urban areas, maybe some cul-de-sacs, things like that, where not only are we doing overhead line training, we're doing underground training as well, possibly even substation training, and hope to build a facility where we can co-locate some of our servers in the event that we have a disaster that takes this building out. Even though I said the 2009 tornado hit this place, so we ought to be good for another 50 years, I hope. That can always happen, so we want a place to go in the fact that something happens here. And also, whenever we complete a substation, we really need to have our foot into the next one, so we'll be also looking to acquire some property to build a substation, probably somewhere in the northwestern part of our service area. Now, some challenges that we have are, like I said earlier, equity. And I know equity is nothing that keeps you awake. But if we own, or the members own, close to 70% of the cooperative, well, that's just a little bit too much. We need to be able to spread that out some. We don't want someone to come in here and have the potential to take that high equity figure and purchase us with our own dollars. I mentioned earlier we're having issues and challenges with right-of-way because we had these storms that came through. We need to maintain their right-of-way. Who in here wants us to come in their yard and start cutting on their favorite tree? That doesn't make people happy. And a lot of time people plant their favorite trees right there on the utility easement. So we have to negotiate that as well. TVA rates. TVA's going up on their wholesale rates to us. If you go back to that 82% figure that we pay to them, it's difficult for us to absorb any of that. So as TVA goes up to us, we have to pass that on to a certain extent. And TVA is systematically going to raise rates probably 1.5%. Nothing that's going to cause too big a discomfort, but something that they're planning on doing over the next 5 years. Something that I'm not completely in agreement with, and we're going to have discussions on that in the future. So I just mentioned that we have challenges as far as right-of-way maintenance, rates, and also our operations. Now, if you remember what I said earlier, the same challenges we're having in 2017. So as things change, often some of the core things that we're working at, they never seem to change. To break down some of our projects, our construction work plan projects, which are usually upgrades to substation or the circuits that already exist, we'll spend about $3.5 million in that next year. New services to serve our new consumers, somewhere around $3 million. We're going to spend close to $1 million, somewhere between $850,000 to $1 million, pole inspection and changeouts. That is something that we do very well. And I know you probably don't think that we do a great job of storm restoration, especially if your power is out, but rarely do we have issues because of broken poles, or more specifically, poles that are broken because they were old and deteriorated. We inspect a great number of poles every year. If we see issues, we change them out. We need to finish up the East Cox complex. We want to acquire the property in DeSoto County. The fiber construction, you've heard me talk about that really for several years. Like I said, at the moment, state law does not allow us to get into the internet business to where we can provide an internet service to you. So do we need to get out there and change that law? We might at some point. But right now we're going to focus, make sure that we get our fiber ring built, and then decide at what pace we're going to try to branch it out. Do we run it to your home? I don't know. Do we run it to the road, put in antennas, and offer you a wireless mesh? Could be. Do we offer you internet service? Or do we lease our facilities to a provider already for for high-speed internet service. So it's like I said last year, I think that the next greatest thing in North Mississippi is high-speed internet access to every home, access that's reliable as well as affordable. Are we going to provide that? I don't know. We'll be a part of it. I think we can be a part of it and make sure that you get that at some point. We've had several solar installations this year, something that we support a great deal. We think solar power is a good idea as long as it is not overly subsidized by you, the current ratepayer. If someone puts solar panels on their house and tells one of y'all, I'm selling electricity back to the co-op and I'm selling at a high rate, remember, who's paying for that? All of y'all in this room and everybody else. So we want to make sure that we have solar power because it's the responsible thing to do. But at the same time, we don't want to do it at the expense of our other members that we have. We're going to continue here at North Central to any time we make a decision, think strategically. We're going to think strategically when it comes to fiber optics, when it comes to shared services, services that we can provide to other co-ops on a cost basis, other services that we may be able to offer our members that we haven't done as of yet. We're going to look to expand our communications effort, not just the amount, but the way that we do it. As you'll probably notice that you see cameras all throughout the room. We're going to continue to work on expanding North Central. At some point, the purchasing and the combining of electric co-ops is going to be the right thing to do. We're just looking for the right time to do it and who to do it with. We're going to continue to work on a statewide brand. And I brought this up before, and I think that it's very important that you realize you're a member of a cooperative. Maybe North Central should start calling itself on a daily basis North Central Electric Cooperative. We're going to discuss that in the future because I don't think people understand the power that the cooperatives in Mississippi have. Not just in Mississippi, but in the Southeast and the whole country. If you look at those maps at some point, if you look at that first map to your left, you're going to see a map that shows roughly 25 electric distribution cooperatives, which is what North Central is. If you look at the top, you're probably going to see us. So you see a bunch of different co-ops. Now, if you look over to the right, you see how much of the state of Mississippi electric co-ops cover. Right now, it's about 55% of all the meters in the state, but it's well over 80% of the land mass. So as you can tell, there's a good chance that as Mississippi grows in the future, you're going to see it's going to grow with electric cooperatives. Nationally, electric cooperatives, we're leading the charge in cybersecurity. We have a great risk, I'll put it that way. Every night, people try to hack into our systems. Now try to imagine how many hacks we get a night. It's close to 200,000 attempts on our system every night. They want to get into our system, some just to wreak havoc. They could get into our SCADA system, operate line sections, but they could also get into some information. I didn't realize how big a risk this was until I attended a legal workshop about a year ago. Somebody said, what's the Social Security number worth? I don't know. I was told you could sell a Social Security number for about $25 or $30. Is that a big deal? Well, how many do we have? 31,000? That's current. Every month we have about 300 people move on the system and 250 move off. So you can see the potential for us having in our database thousands and thousands of Social Security numbers. So we have to work hard to make sure that we protect your confidential information. Also, those of y'all that follow the environment know that the Clean Power Plan had been advancing through the EPA through the years, and it wound up going to court. And as we probably figured, as we had a change in administrations, the brakes kind of hit on the Clean Power Plan. Co-ops weren't really excited about this. We're excited about taking care of the environment, but we're not ready to throw fossil fuel under the bus right now. It's what keeps electricity rates affordable in rural America. But we realize one thing. We're not going to go up there and say, don't enact the Clean Power Plan. And when they say, well, what should we do? Say, Nothing. Just leave it alone. So right now we're working on, and promise me, we're not going to adopt the segue, replace, and repeal that much at all, because that was a failed term. But what we are going to do is say, we're not going to Washington as electric cooperatives to tell you what not to do. We're going to try to give you a solution, something that may be better, that may help our environment, and at the same time, probably through a diverse use of fuel, use some coal, make sure that we take advantage of nuclear, take advantage of other resources like natural gas, hydropower, even renewables such as solar. Use that diverse fuel mix and make sure that we have a good access, a good baseline of fuel, good baseline generation, but we keep electricity rates affordable as well. Now, I like to wrap up with always talking about safety. And I apologize, you should have warned me. I should have had a safety moment when you came in. So since we still got a couple of minutes here, I will take that minute and say, if anything happened in here right now, please note you can leave out the back, and we've got doors on either side. And if we ever had something that required an emergency response, JD is our man. He's always going to call 911. I've got to make a better effort of getting that on our agenda at the very top more often. But at safety, we're not going to water down our program. It's very important to us here. We're not going to, when I talk about projects, we're going to push off into next year. Safety won't be one of those. You have to live safety every day. It has to be a culture, or it will not work at all. It has to work for every employee, every member, everyone that is in contact with us, whether it's in the field or in our office, whether it's working storm work or whether it's working right here in our own neighborhoods. Every employee at North Central, every director, every member that comes in contact with us has the right to leave that experience injury-free, the right to return to their family injury-free. That's not something that we just preach at a safety meeting. That's something that we live every day. It's our culture, and it's always up here. So I've rambled on for a while. Do y'all have any questions of me? Got one up front. Can you ask three? You can ask three. Do I have to answer three? Ask three.
First, what's causing the growth in Marshall County?
Right now, it's industrial growth. And the industrial growth, if you've been up there, you got Niagara Water, McCormick, Volvo, Rockfine, all this industry coming up there. And that is really being fueled primarily by the future Interstate 269. And if you've been up there, you've seen how 269 is coming around. It's going to look almost like if you've ever traveled to Nashville, you got Interstate 40, 440, and 840. But it's going to be a big loop. And it's going to, for this area, we can talk about moving product. People talk about that a lot. I think it's really tapping into an incredible labor source, because you can work in North Marshall County and live in Marshall County, or you can live in Arlington or Millington, Tennessee, and probably still get there within 20 minutes, or as far away as potentially Helena, Arkansas. So it's kind of decreasing the labor pool, or condensing the labor pool, for a better way of putting it. And that's where we're seeing most of our energy growth right now. And then, of course, some of the home starts, that's just becoming because the economy is slowly improving. There's just a little bit more confidence there.
Okay, question two. Very disappointed with the progress of fiber optics. Although Chattanooga is in a different state, their electric power board is called the Chattanooga Electric Power Board. Implemented and have been supplying internet to their residents for a long time.
Right.
Very successful. And I think you, the residents here, people here, would appreciate it very much, and it would be, most people make that transition from wherever the supplier is to that service. So I'd like to know more, other than sequestarian, why we don't have it.
All right. Did everybody hear the question? Question is, there are places in Tennessee, specifically Chattanooga, Electric Power Board, they put in fiber up there several years ago. And the question is, they have a successful internet business, and we should be more aggressive doing that at North Central. Good question. First of all, they are in another state. Second of all, it's a municipal-run utility. So they've got a lot more ability to come in and say, we are going to initiate a fiber to the home project. Now, if I remember correctly, EPB started their fiber project really for system reliability. They have a cutting-edge self-healing system, if I recall, a system to where their SCADA system, their brains or their control room, can sense a problem, and it just doesn't tell the utility that something's wrong. It actually corrects it itself. We're not there yet. Probably the biggest hindrance that we're having right now with fiber is, may not be the biggest, but it's a big one, is product. Everybody wants to get in the fiber business right now. So getting product, getting fiber itself is difficult. B is going to be, and we're going to move forward with building the ring that serves our substations, that serves our utility needs. But right now, and we did do a study, the study's complete. Northcentral right now, it is believed, could get into the internet business, if it were legal, which it is not, for a $70 million investment. It's assumed, doing some study, that we would probably get somewhere between a 35 to 50% take rate. We'd be able to sign up that many consumers, and that it would work. The problem is, it's hard for me to sit in here and tell you that we're going to put a $70 million risk to the electric ratepayer all up front to build fiber to the home when we know that we have a legal question. So you are very correct. We are moving slowly. Some of the slow I like. I call it deliberate. Some of it, we're moving too slow. I wish we were putting fiber up a lot quicker. And I think that once we get over, we've built one strand, once we get over the hump and get our guys used to designing it, get our contractors used to installing it, it's going to move a lot faster. But how fast is the right speed? I don't know. But we're going to work very hard to make sure that we get the initial fiber runs built that connect our substations. Then we're going to look at building it out to, as I tell people, the roads. And then we get it to the roads, make a decision if we're going to take it into the streets and to the homes. But it's a point well taken. And I have been an advocate for fiber for several years now, and it is moving a little slower than I wish it had. And at some point, we are going to have to get out in front of it a little bit and see if we can change the law. And when we change the law, who knows? The people that currently offer internet service, they may up their game a little bit. Right now, they'll tell you they have no reason to. And then maybe it's Northcentral internet access, or maybe it's just leasing out our fiber to them to provide high-speed internet. But it's a good point.
But the only reason why, only people I know would be opposed to expediting it and moving fast would be the people who are already supplying something, like some type of internet, whatever. They don't want to object. I can't imagine the household would have any objection.
I don't think you're going to see an objection from the household. We may see it from the state legislature. One thing we have to take into consideration is if a Comcast, AT&T, C-Spire, or Verizon really wanted this market to themselves and did not want Northcentral in the market, they could easily price us out of it. Easily. I think we've got enough customer loyalty to sign people up. But unlike the monopolistic appearance of the utility, this would be very much a competitive environment. So not only would we have a take rate where we sign people up, we got to retain them. And we've got to make sure that we don't put our utility customers at risk with a huge investment. And we might sign up a lot of people initially, but we know if AT&T and Comcast really made their mind up to it and want to lowball people, they could push us out of the market. It's going to be something to where we're not going to be able to just smash them head to head like that. It would be great if we could find a partner to go in with. But as far as what you say, our study shows that you people in the room, you people that are homeowners, small business owners, you like the idea of Northcentral having high-speed internet to your home.
Third question. Your balance sheet. It looks very appealing to people like energy to buy it.
We have not. Is that it? No, we have not. You know, I don't really know what Entergy's mission is right now or any other utility. Now, if we were to go back to the early 90s, we would have a red flag up right now, because back then is when the investor-owned utilities, as he mentioned in Entergy, really were looking to acquire electric cooperatives. Not an electric cooperative that had 4 meters per mile of line, but an electric cooperative like Northcentral with 22 meters per mile of line in an urban area sitting adjacent to Entergy. So that is an outstanding point, one that we're aware of, and one that we are trying to work with TVA to come up with a mechanism to reduce our equity, not to wreck our balance sheet, but we do not want to be that attractive for a buyout.
People here might decide they wouldn't want to take you off.
It could be made to look very attractive. I would agree. I would agree. I would agree. Yes, sir.
First, just two real easy ones. Is the Casey Road project finished?
I do not believe it's finished yet. Darren, can you help me? Casey Road.
It's through all except for where, right here at the substation.
All right. Just where it's going to take off the substation.
That's right here in the top. Second, how much and how quick do you feel I-269, which looks like they didn't make a wrap up this long?
I'm not real sure. Larry or Michael may know, but
How much, when the deal's online fully, how much is going to help us with revenue? With the marquees, they got a lot of revenue.
you know, I really don't know exactly how it's going to play out. I do know that often you'll see a project like this, and people will say, "Well, you're never going to see that constructed in our lifetime." Now, unless you're going to die soon, you're going to see that constructed. It's going to be here before we know it. I know that DeSoto County did a very comprehensive study on how that should build out from a planning standpoint, and I know that Marshall County was working on one. Because what you want to make sure happens is, let's talk about the warehousing and industry up in Chickasaw Trails. Well, we don't need to duplicate that all throughout Interstate 269. We have an area, we need to have a planning process where there's an area that's dedicated to the service sector, or retail, or healthcare, or education even, and then residential as well, make sure that's planned out. If they can make sure, and and we've had this conversation, Northcentral has, with both governments, if DeSoto County and Marshall County can remember that river doesn't separate them that much, and that they need to work together, because them working together is what's going to make this entire project very successful. I think we're going to see an incredible economic benefit. Any other ones? All right. Michael has corrected financials that he'll hand out, so you can glance at those. And I've answered some questions now, but I'm gonna hang around for a while because I got to work till 5 at least. And if y'all need me, I'll be around answering the additional ones.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay. Next on our agenda is unfinished business. I'm not aware of any there. Next category is new business. Other than the election, I'm not aware of any there. So at this time, if you could ought to listen carefully, I'm going to ask Ms. Hobbs if she would, and her committee would, they're going to tell you how to vote. So if you can just sort of pause for a little bit and listen to her. If I need to answer a question, I'll be glad to try. And then as soon as they have done that, that will be the voting process. And then the election committee then, after we've already ensured that everybody has voted, then they will retire to count the ballots. And while that's being done, we'll have some drawings for door prizes, which is always good if you win. So, Ms. Hobbs.